Where do we go when we sleep? What are dreams but echoes of trauma that we register beneath the black stillness of nothing? We are nothing. Sinister Narratives presents
INSTA model stalked to death. The glittering lights of Los Angeles had always held a certain allure, a promise of fame and fortune that seemed to beckon to those who dared to dream. I was one of the lucky ones, a social media influencer with a following that numbered in the millions. My life had become a whirlwind of photo shoots, brand collaborations, and glamorous parties, each moment carefully curated for my adoring fans. But beneath the veneer of perfection, a shadow had begun to creep into my world. It started innocuously enough, a lingering gaze from a stranger, a message from an unfamiliar account. I brushed off the unease, chalking it up to the price of fame, until the night I found myself on the brink of drowning in a rich man's pool. The party had been a lavish affair, a celebration of opulence that seemed to know no bounds. As I mingled with the elite, I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, a sense of being watched. Ignoring the discomfort, I joined a group of revelers at the poolside, laughter and music filling the air. But then, the ground seemed to shift beneath me. One moment I was sipping champagne, and the next, I was submerged in the icy water. Panic clawed at my chest as I struggled to find my bearings, my lungs burning as I fought against the depths. The world around me blurred, and just as I felt my strength waning, strong arms pulled me to safety. Gasping for air, I turned to my savior, a man whose eyes held a mixture of concern and familiarity. He introduced himself as Vincent, a friend of the host. As he handed me a towel, a shiver ran down my spine. There was something about his gaze, a depth that seemed to pierce through the facade I had carefully constructed. Weeks passed, and the unease lingered, a constant whisper at the edge of my consciousness. And then, one fateful night, the shadow materialized into something far more tangible. As I left a trendy nightclub, I found myself surrounded by a group of menacing figures, their eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized I had stumbled into the midst of a gang altercation. Instinct took over as I ducked behind a car, the sound of gunshots ringing in my ears. Panic surged through me, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I waited for the chaos to subside. When the coast was clear, I emerged from my hiding spot, my breath ragged and pulse racing. The encounter left me shaken, but it also ignited a newfound determination. I was no longer content to be a pawn in someone else's game. With the help of a private investigator, I began to dig into the unsettling messages and encounters that had plagued me. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the stranger's lingering gaze, the ominous messages that seemed to anticipate my every move. The stalker had become a puppeteer, orchestrating a sinister dance that led me deeper into the shadows. It was a cat-and-mouse game, each step I took revealing a new layer of his obsession. But as I delved deeper, I also discovered a strength within myself that I hadn't known existed. No longer content to be a victim, I was determined to unravel the mystery and bring him to justice. The final act unfolded on a stormy night, rain battering against the windows of my upscale apartment. I had received another message, a chilling taunt that left no doubt of his presence. My heart raced as I realized he was closer than I had ever imagined. As I turned to leave, a figure emerged from the darkness. Vincent. His once familiar face was contorted with a mixture of obsession and madness. He confessed to his twisted infatuation, his obsession with me driving him to commit unspeakable acts. He had orchestrated the near drowning, the gang encounter, all in an attempt to draw me closer to him. Fear and anger surged through me as he advanced, his words a chilling symphony of delusion and malice. But as he lunged, I fought back with a determination born from survival. It was a battle of wills, a struggle between a victim and her tormentor. The room became a battleground, shattered glass and overturned furniture a testament to our clash. And then, in a desperate bid for escape, I managed to push him back, the force of the impact sending him crashing through the window and onto the rain-soaked street below. For a moment, I thought it was over, but as I peered out the shattered window, a sense of dread settled over me. He was gone, vanished into the night like a phantom. And I knew that he would return, that his obsession was far from extinguished. Days turned into weeks, and the shadow of Vincent's presence continued to loom over me. I took precautions, hired security, and remained vigilant. But no matter how hard I tried to move on, the fear persisted, a constant reminder of the darkness that had infiltrated my life. Then, one night as I returned home, I felt it, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. My heart raced as I stepped into the dimly lit apartment, a sense of dread settling over me. And then, from the shadows, he emerged, Vincent, his eyes gleaming with a twisted mixture of desire and madness. My screams echoed through the air as he lunged, his grip like a vice around my throat. I fought with every ounce of strength I had left, desperate to escape the clutches of my tormentor. But his grip tightened, his fingers digging into my flesh as he pressed me against the wall. As darkness threatened to claim me, a desperate thought crossed my mind. With a final surge of energy, I reached for the lamp on the nearby table and swung it with all my might. The glass shattered against his head, and in the moment of his stunned hesitation, I broke free from his grasp. But the victory was short-lived, for he recovered quickly, his eyes ablaze with a sinister determination. It was a battle of survival, a clash between predator and prey. I fought with a ferocity born from desperation, the shadows of my apartment a silent witness to our struggle. And then, with a final burst of strength, I managed to push him back, his body crashing into the shattered remains of the window. Rain poured into the room, a cold and unforgiving torrent that seemed to mirror the chaos of our confrontation. For a moment, he teetered on the edge, his fingers clutching onto the window frame. And then, with a haunting smile, he let go, disappearing into the night like a phantom. Exhausted and battered, I sank to the floor, rain mingling with tears on my cheeks. The nightmare had reached its climax, but I knew that the darkness would continue to haunt me. Vincent was still out there, a shadow that refused to be banished. As the rain continued to fall, a bitter taste of bitter victory settled over me. The battle had been won, but the war against my stalker was far from over. And as I stared out into the stormy night, I knew that the shadows would continue to dance, a haunting reminder of the horrors that had invaded my life. Months passed, and the memory of my harrowing ordeal began to fade. The scars, both visible and invisible, remained, a constant reminder of the darkness that had infiltrated my life. I threw myself into my work, determined to regain a sense of normalcy and control. It was at a lavish wedding dinner party that fate twisted its cruel fingers once more. The ballroom was a sea of elegance, laughter, and clinking glasses. I mingled, forced smiles masking the unease that still lingered within me. The night was meant to be a celebration, a joyous occasion, but in my heart I knew that the shadows had a tendency to resurface. As I stood by the grand staircase, a chill ran down my spine, a sensation of being watched settling over me like a heavy shroud. I turned, and there he was. Vincent, his presence a nightmarish specter that had returned to haunt me. My breath caught in my throat as our eyes met, a sickening mixture of recognition and dread passing between us. The mask of civility he wore was a mockery, a veneer that barely concealed the madness that lurked beneath. "Hello, dear," he purred, his voice like a serpent's hiss. "Long time no see." A wave of nausea washed over me as memories of our violent struggle flooded back. The shattered glass, the rain-soaked chaos, the desperation to escape. But here he stood, as if he were an invited guest to this joyful event. "Vincent," I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" He smirked, his lips curling into a sinister smile. "Oh, I couldn't resist the chance to see you again, my dear. It's been far too long." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead as he approached, his gaze unrelenting. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized that I was trapped, surrounded by oblivious partygoers who had no idea of the nightmare that stood before me. I backed away, my heart racing, the memory of his hands around my throat etched into my mind. "Stay away from me," I hissed through clenched teeth. His laughter was a haunting melody that seemed to echo in the air, a chilling reminder of the darkness that had consumed him. "Oh, my dear, you can't escape me that easily. We have unfinished business." With every step he took, I retreated, my mind racing for an escape. But as the crowd swirled around us, I realized that I was trapped in a macabre dance, a deadly waltz with the devil himself. And then, as if by some twisted fate, the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the ballroom into a momentary darkness. Panic surged through me, and when the lights returned, he was gone, vanished into thin air like a phantom. My heart pounded in my chest as I scanned the room, my eyes wide with fear. Had he truly disappeared, or was he still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike? As the evening wore on, I found myself on edge, my nerves frayed. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden menace, every glance from a stranger a potential threat. I knew that I couldn't let him continue to control my life, that I had to find a way to escape his clutches once and for all. But just as I was beginning to consider slipping away from the party, a group of police officers entered the ballroom. They were accompanied by concerned murmurs and puzzled glances from the guests. "Excuse me, ma'am," one of the officers said, approaching me with a wary expression. "Are you okay?" I nodded, my voice catching in my throat as I recounted the events of the evening, Vincent's reappearance, his ominous words, the feeling of being stalked once more. But the officers exchanged uncertain glances, their expressions a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. "Ma'am, we've been keeping an eye on you throughout the evening," another officer explained gently. "But there's been no sign of anyone matching the description you've given us." My heart sank, a sickening realization settling over me. Had Vincent truly been a phantom, a figment of my imagination? Had the trauma of our previous encounters driven me to the brink of madness? As the officers continued to question me, I felt a growing sense of frustration and desperation. How could they not see the danger that lurked just beneath the surface? How could they dismiss my fears as the product of a troubled mind? In the end, they assured me that they would continue to monitor the situation, that they would keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. But as they left, I was left with a gnawing sense of dread, a feeling that the shadows would continue to haunt me, that Vincent's presence would remain a nightmarish specter that refused to be banished. And so, as I stood alone in the ballroom, the echoes of the evening's events reverberating in my mind, I realized that I was trapped in a twisted dance with shadows. The police may think me a crazy woman, the guests may return to their celebrations, but I knew the truth. Vincent was real, and the darkness he embodied would continue to haunt me. A chilling reminder that some nightmares are all too real. The police's dismissive attitude only fueled my determination to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't let Vincent's malevolent presence continue to haunt me, to threaten the lives of others. And so, I turned to the one person who might be able to help me, a private investigator named Marcus, known for his relentless pursuit of the truth. I met with Marcus in a dimly lit cafe, the weight of my fear and desperation heavy in the air. I recounted every detail of my chilling encounters with Vincent, the near drowning, the gang violence, and his sinister reappearance at the wedding. Marcus listened intently, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of concern and determination. "This man, Vincent, he's playing a dangerous game," Marcus said, his voice low and gravely. "But we can't let fear dictate our actions. We need to expose him for what he truly is." With Marcus's help, I delved into the depths of the internet, scouring social media platforms for any traces of Vincent's presence. What we discovered sent shivers down my spine, a trail of influencers who had disappeared without a trace, their online presence abruptly severed. It was as if Vincent had become a digital wraith, leaving behind only echoes of his sinister deeds. As we continued to dig, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Vincent wasn't just a stalker. He was something far more malevolent. He was a collector of souls, a twisted predator who donned the skin of his victims under the cover of the moonlight. My heart raced as I realized the extent of his depravity. He wasn't content with mere terror. He sought to obliterate the very essence of those he targeted, to become them in the most horrifying way imaginable. Armed with this knowledge, Marcus and I embarked on a relentless pursuit of Vincent. We tracked his movements, piecing together a pattern that seemed to defy all reason. He targeted influencers, those who had achieved a level of fame that had become intoxicating to him. One night, as the moon hung low in the sky, we finally cornered him in an abandoned warehouse. His lair was a grotesque collage of human skin, the walls adorned with the remains of his victims. My stomach churned at the sight, but I refused to let the horror paralyze me. Vincent's eyes gleamed with a twisted pleasure as he stepped forward, his voice dripping with malevolence. "Ah, my dear, you've come to witness my masterpiece." But I was no longer the terrified victim he had once pursued. I was a survivor, a warrior who had faced the depths of darkness and emerged stronger. With a steady hand, I drew a gleaming knife from my coat, my fingers wrapping around the hilt with a sense of purpose. "You won't terrorize anyone else," I declared, my voice resolute. Marcus and I charged forward, a fierce determination propelling us into the heart of the darkness. The ensuing struggle was brutal, a collision of wills and strength. But as Vincent's grip faltered, I seized the opportunity, my knife slicing through the air and finding its mark, his throat. Blood spilled like a grotesque waterfall, staining the floor as Vincent's eyes widened in shock and horror. His movements grew sluggish, his breath ragged as he stumbled backward, his hands futilely clutching at his throat. With a final gurgle, Vincent collapsed to the ground, his malevolent reign of terror finally brought to an end. The room was heavy with the stench of blood, the echoes of the struggle reverberating in the air. I stood there panting and covered in gore, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding through me. As Marcus and I stepped back from the scene of our victory, the weight of the night's events settled over us. The darkness that had once plagued my existence had been vanquished, but at a cost. The scars, both physical and emotional, would remain, a haunting reminder of the horrors that I had faced. And yet, even as I stood in the aftermath of the battle, a chilling thought crossed my mind. Vincent had been a predator, a monster who had stalked and terrorized. But what if he hadn't acted alone? What if others like him lurked in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike? As I looked out into the night, a shiver ran down my spine. The battle against the darkness was far from over. It was merely the beginning of a war against the malevolent forces that sought to devour the light. In the days that followed, I helped Marcus piece together the evidence of Vincent's crimes, ensuring that justice would be served. But even as Vincent's reign of terror came to an end, the scars he had left behind continued to haunt me, a chilling reminder that evil could take on many forms. And as I stared into the abyss of the night, a sense of unease settled over me. The shadows still danced, and the battle against the darkness was far from over.